Gerard Collins, born almost 85 years ago, Convent Street, just above the convent, on October 16th, 1938. My Christian name was influenced by the proximity of the nuns who suggested to my mother I be called after St. Gerard Mandela, on whose feast day I was born. My dad wasn't terribly pleased about that because he wanted me to be called James. I went to local primary school. I have great memories of Master Ward, Master Sullivan and Andrew Downey, a wonderful person. Went on to second level school at St. Itis College, magnificent college run by Jim O'Kelly, Ida O'Kelly, Anne O'Kelly, Patrick O'Crohore and others, Michael Dalton. A wonderful college. My problem was that I dodged going to school too much. My uncle Mick, who lived across the road, used to get me to move along with him on his tractor and his machinery because of his inability to operate these things. Then I was frog marched to a boarding school up in Ballyfin outside Portlaoise, where I left at Leaving Cert Achievement onto college in Dublin, which I very much enjoyed. Got distracted by many other things there other than educating myself. Became involved in the Students' Union, was elected president of the Students' Union as a complete outsider, re-elected because I was so good. And then I became involved in establishing a strong unit of Fianna Fáil among the universities and came to the notice of many in the national scene, which proved helpful, I suppose, in a way, down along the line from that. When I qualified in Dublin as a Bachelor of Arts, giving me authority to start teaching, I was offered a job in the Vocational School in Abbeyfeale. The headmaster at that time was Padraig O'Carroll, and there were great teachers there, Padraig O'Cleary, Pat Moore, Michael O'Shea, and others, Maura O'Sullivan. And it was wonderful teaching there, but my stay was short, very short, because I was plum-picked or invited, whatever way you would have put it, by Sean Lemass to come back to Dublin to move into Fianna Fáil headquarters, where the General Secretary of the party, Senator Thomas Lincoln Mullins, became ill through shingles in his eyes. And from there then, I was very much involved. But one thing for certain, I returned home every weekend to Abbeyfeale because that was my life, if you like. That was my family, my friends. But that was it. My parents were wonderful people, and I owe so much to them. My dad, who was a public representative in Parliament at the time of his death, and indeed my mum, who was a national school teacher all her life in the school out in Cratloe, a place where she loved to be. But when my dad died, I was selected by my political party to stand for election by the people of County Limerick. I was successful, and on my first day to Dáil Éireann, I was accompanied by my wife Hilary and my mother, and by two great friends, Nicholas Cotter, now of Glenashrone, and Denny Fitzgerald of Glenashrone. And we had a wonderful little day together. And the highlight of the day, not after being introduced to Dáil Éireann, was an invitation by President Eamon de Valera, mainly because of his friendship with my mother, to come along to ours in Uachtaráin for tea and meeting. And we had a wonderful chat. It's a memory I will always treasure. Following the general election in 1969, Jack Lynch, our Taoiseach, an exceptionally great man who I admired so much, appointed me junior minister to George Colley, Minister for Industry and Commerce and the Gaeltacht. But that appointment only lasted a short period of time because of the crisis of the arms trial, if you remember, and the difficulties that arose therefrom. And a new government had to be reappointed because of ministers who were fired, and I was one of those appointed to cabinet at that time at a very young age. I was appointed Minister of Posts and Telegraph and Communications, responsibility for television, RTE, radio, television, which was a difficult one then, probably still is. Following that, I was Minister for Justice in 3 different governments, and that was some job. That was some job. I wouldn't wish it on anybody because of the difficulties and the threats to security and the strong presence of protection at all times, day and night, to make sure that I wasn't wiped out, as it were. And then I was Minister for Foreign Affairs in 2 different governments. That area I loved too. The difficulty was For me, there was one objective: get home at weekends, because my basic involvement in political life was to represent the people of County Limerick, to whom I felt extremely answerable, and of course to my wife Hilary, who was at home in Abbeyfeale and who kept our marriage life together. Not easy for her, I might add. This particular photograph is an exceptional one in that in it we have Nelson Mandela, who had just been released from prison, 28 years in Robben Island, but released just then by President de Klerk of South Africa. And on the occasion I was delegated by the European Union to go there to represent the European Union countries and to be part of the official welcoming ceremony on his release. On the way, a wonderful ambassador in London, Joe Small, and Joe suggested I bring a little gift for him with an Irish an Irish context, and I had a little book on the Book of Kells at the time, which I brought to President Mandela, and as I presented to him, he borrowed my glasses, and then he saw that it was the Book of Kells copy, and boy, did he know all about the Book of Kells, and quite a lot about it. He was thrilled. I had difficulty getting my glasses back from him because he thought they were his, but I persevered. And then on this particular photograph was taken in Damascus in Syria on the day that Brian Keenan, who had been held a hostage for 4 or 5 years at the time, was released into my custody, or into my safekeeping, is the proper way of saying it, by the Foreign Minister of Syria in his office in Damascus. Also in the picture is a gentleman with the glasses, our ambassador at the time, who accompanied me on that occasion. That was a wonderful occasion too, because our efforts to persuade those who could influence the release of Brian Keenan came to fruition, and an injustice long perpetrated was eventually cast aside. So that was it until the end. I was finished my work in government, and then I at the age of 55, I was nominated by my party to stand for the European Parliament. I was elected. At that time the constituency was a 5-seater, and I was re-elected later on, which was a 4-seater. And then during that period of time, I was Vice President of the European Parliament, which I very much enjoyed. But again, as I say, I had only one thing in mind. I got home every weekend. If I couldn't have done that, well then, that was it. I was involved in political life until the age of 65, when I luckily had the good sense to look forward to retirement, which I have enjoyed ever since.